Hey, welcome back to the Too Fast channel. In today's unboxing video, we're going to unbox some audio equipment which I'm going to be installing in my 2008 Volkswagen EOS VR6. Currently, if you follow my channel, you would have seen that I upgraded from the factory head unit to an RCD 360, which basically is an RCD 330 head unit. And that's a great head unit for the money, but it doesn't have a lot of the features that I'm accustomed to having in my automobile. Primarily, the RCD 360 does not have any type of internal crossover network. It also doesn't have any type of digital signal processing. It does not have a graphic equalizer. It has 3 bands for tonal adjustment, bass, mid, and treble, and that's basically it. It also does not output a lot of power, which you know, may or may not be an issue for some people, but it's definitely not something that really works for me. It's a great plug-and-play unit. It's reasonably priced. You can get your steering wheel controls to work with it. You've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's touchscreen. It's much better than the factory radios, of course, but it's real limited. And so one of the reasons I didn't go with a higher-end aftermarket unit at the time was because of COVID. You wouldn't think that there would be a inavailability. You wouldn't think that car audio media units would be out of stock everywhere, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A lot of computers are out of stock. A lot of head units are out of stock. I mean, there was issues with toilet paper being out of stock. And it hasn't been until recently to where I could really get my hands on the head unit that I wanted. And you can see that in the background here. It's the Pioneer DMH-1500NEX. So I managed to pick up one of these. They're still hard to find. Crutchfield's been out of these forever. And the ones that are available on eBay and Amazon, people are trying to get $500–600 for these. And I mean, you know, frankly, $300 is MSRP on these, which is what I had to pay. I wasn't happy about paying $300 for it, but you know, given I ordered this online from Best Buy, and they're the only ones who had any. Everybody else was asking stupid money for these things. So managed to finally get one. Now, the radio's just a small aspect of the installation that you have to worry about. You're going to need a interface module to get your steering wheel controls to work and to make sure you don't have any type of battery drain if you have an older car, you know, a 2007, 6, 5, and so on. I don't think the battery drain problem is present on 2008s, but I wouldn't take the chance. I mean, it's pretty much gone by year 2009, but so I opted to go with the Idatalink Maestro Rr. I took a look at that. That gives you a lot of functionality. You can program some of your steering wheel controls. It has an ODB2 interface, so you can get climate. If you have a climate control system in your Volkswagen, you can display the climatic controls on screen. You can't adjust them, but you can see them. You've got gauge display, you've got vehicle information display, backup camera display, of course, and you've got your backup sensor display. So you get a lot more functionality with the Idealink Maestro Rr than you would with some of the other products on the market. And that runs about $150, give or take, for that module. And on top of that, you've got to opt for this unit right here. For my particular vehicle, it's the Idealink Maestro Wiring Harness. It's the Vw1 that's designed specifically for my vehicle, and there's a few others. Now, one thing I should say about the Idatalink, their website is very concise. You can go in and punch in your year and make of your vehicle, and they'll tell you exactly what you need. You can print out guides, like this is a guide for the Vw1, the wiring harness, and the Pioneer radio. This one, the DMH-1500NEX. So it's very, you can download a PDF. You can print out specifically what you need to print out. All the data is here. This is the owner's guide. I also printed out a installation guide. And the installation guide, we'll cover this in another video when I start putting things together. This installation guide gives you a complete breakdown of what's plugged into the Idatalink Maestro Rr and how you splice this Vw1 Idatalink wiring harness into the factory Pioneer wiring harness. And I'll discuss that in more detail in the next video when I get around to actually doing this. It also mentions that there will be some cables that you don't need down here. Also over here, while I'm on the topic, right over here shows a audio cable that connects to your Pioneer radio. This audio cable is supposed to go into the aux jack and then connect to the Idatalink Maestro Rr. It took me a while to actually track down what this cable is meant for. So I'll just mention it right here. If you have Bluetooth in your car right now, in your Volkswagen, and you want to keep that Bluetooth functional, you need to hook up this cable. Now, my 2008 EOS does not have a Bluetooth in it at all, so I'm not going to install this cable. Specifically because I need the aux jack on the Pioneer. The aux jack is for the digital signal processing microphone. That's a separate microphone from your Bluetooth microphone. The Pioneers have two microphone input jacks. There's a 2.5 millimeter for your Bluetooth, and there's a 3.5 millimeter for the digital signal processing microphone, which is used to generate pink noise and set your gain levels and basically do time alignment. So that's why I'm not going to be hooking up this existing cable, and that's why I invested a bit of time in researching this. It wasn't easy for me to find out what this was for and if I really need it or not. So anyway, so that's it for the manuals. Let me discuss what we have on the table here. I don't have everything yet. I still have a bezel kit for installing the Pioneer in the Volkswagen. I don't have that yet. I picked this up off of Amazon. This runs about $10. This is a backup camera installation kit. It has a long single video cable. It's got some wire ties in it, a power cable. It's got a kind of a butt connector here that allows you to connect two male RCAs together. And there's also a pry tool. The reason I bought this is because I don't have a backup camera yet. I probably will install one, but I don't want to have to pull everything apart to run a cable. So since I have to pull things apart to run RCA cables and turn on cables already, I'm going to run this and hook it up to the head unit and have this back in the trunk ready for installation of a backup camera at a later date. So that's why I have this. I also picked up this. This is basically a 2.5 millimeter mono microphone jack. And the reason I picked this up is I installed a factory Bluetooth microphone in the EOS. My EOS did not come with one. I purchased a factory Bluetooth microphone and installed it in the map light assembly and routed the wire down through the A-pillar down in underneath the driver's side of the dash. I'm going to route that over to the Pioneer radio, And I'm going to cut the end off and I'm going to solder this on, and that's what I'm going to use for the Bluetooth microphone. If you're contemplating an installation like this, you might see some posts where people say, I can't speak for other cars, but for Volkswagens, they might come back and say, well, you can't use your factory Volkswagen microphone for this setup. Well, that is true to a certain point. If you have a microphone in your Volkswagen, it most likely goes to a Bluetooth module underneath your passenger seat, so you cannot use it to connect to your aftermarket head unit. But since I don't have a Bluetooth module and I installed the microphone, I'm going to lop the end off, solder this on, and that's going to be my main microphone. The Pioneer does come with a Bluetooth microphone if you want to use it. It's a clip-on microphone that you have to clip on someplace. I just prefer not to have that floating around on the inside of the car, so I'm taking a different route with the microphone. I also want to point out that if you go to Crutchfield's site and pick a head unit and add it to your cart, and you punch in all of your vehicle information, it will tell you what else you need. It will tell you you need this iMaestro Vw1 wiring harness, and you know, gives you a couple of options, but one of them is the iMaestro Rr, and it will give you an antenna adapter. Now, specifically for the EOS, what they recommend is a part number of 40-EU55. And I took a look at that antenna adapter and I said, hey, that's not going to work. And I did a bit more research, and I found that the Metra adapter that I actually need, it's a dual Rca antenna adapter. The EOS actually has two antennas, so you need an adapter that has two inputs for each of the antennas. The Metra antenna adapter that they actually recommend for the EOS is wrong, so do keep that in mind. If you do buy that, I don't even think it will work. First off, the picture that it shows doesn't have this connector on it. It has like a DIN, or it has like a Molex plug on it. So I'm not even sure that would work. But the Pioneer takes a standard plug like this, and your EOS has two antennas, and you need a plug like this. So this is the Metra 40-EU56. So that's something to note if you go to Crutchfield. I found that error on their site. Okay, so let's move on to unboxing, and we'll take a look at what's inside these packages. All right, let's start with the Idealink Maestro Rr. There's actually two versions of this. The other version has, from what I can gather, I don't know all the exact differences, but I noticed that, well, first off, the other one's more expensive, and it gives you some programmable latching outputs. So that might be nice if you're doing something funky where you need a latching output to trigger a relay to maybe raise an amplifier rack or something like that. That's an option. It's the ADS-MRR2. That's the other one. This one's going to serve my purposes, and again, these are pricey at $150. The actual plugs here are there's a cutaway on the box, so you can actually plug this in and program it while it's in the box. And that's one of the other things that I need to mention. When you buy this, you've got to go to their website, download a program, create an account. You'll hook this up to your computer, and once your computer recognizes that it's plugged in and the program that you run recognizes it, you will go through and you'll specify your year, make, model of your automobile. It'll prompt you for what radio you're going to install, and it actually wants your serial number of the radio, and then it gives you the option of what firmware or what firmware options you want to flash to this. And then it gets to a point in my situation, it got to a point where I could choose a couple of the steering wheel button. I could program a couple of the buttons on the steering wheel, on the left side of the steering wheel. You could make some changes. That was the only thing that was really optional. So I programmed a couple of the buttons to pull up the vehicle gauge display and the vehicle information display. I pretty much left the other buttons at default. So I don't really use a voice command button. So I reprogrammed the voice command button to pull up the gauge screen on the radio, and then a long press on the button would give me the vehicle status information. So let's move on. We'll take a look at the contents here. So the iMaestro RR is just this little small box that you're going to have to mount behind your radio, and you've got some plugs on the front. Some of these are color coded to match up with the wiring harness. Some are not. And then there's a few on the back. You won't be using all of the plugins. Well, I won't be using all of them. You might. It depends. It's dependent upon the vehicle application. And then there's a reset button over here. Now there's no mounting tabs on this, but there is a hole through here and through here. So if you had to put this someplace and put a thin wire tie through it to tie it to a wiring harness to keep it out of the way, that is doable. And we'll just take a look at the wiring that's included. And again, depending upon the user manual that you have, there may be some parts that aren't usable, that you will not use for your installation. Like I don't think I will be using this, and I don't believe I will be using that. Now the programming cable that this comes with is really short, and I don't believe this is not a USB-C. It's a different micro USB cable. It's just really short. I used a different one. Just keep that in mind. And that's that. And then this is the wiring harness that you will splice on to this. So that, I believe, well, that's not everything. There is a small quick start guide, which is basically the same thing that I printed out. It's just easier. The 8.5 by 11 version is easier to read than the little one that comes in the box. So that's the Idealink Maestro Rr. That's what comes in the package. Let's go ahead and move on to the Vw1 wiring harness. All right. Depending upon what vehicle you have, for Volkswagens, there's actually two there. I believe there's a Vw2 and a Vw1. This one covers quite a few model years of the Volkswagen. I don't remember the exact year range that this covers, but when you punch in your information on your website or on Crutchfield's site, it will tell you what wiring harness you have. So if you're installing something like this in a Dodge, your wiring harness would be different, and the Honda would be different, and so on. So this is specific for Volkswagen. And again, that's model number HRN-RR-VW1. And this is the only thing that's in the box, is this big wiring harness right here. We'll just take a look at this real quick. There's not really much to talk about. This will plug into your factory Volkswagen harness. This plug right here, it plugs into your ODB2 port. There are 2 wires on this. You can, if you're so inclined to do so, you can remove your existing ODB2 port, and you can cut these wires off of this plug, and you can splice them into your existing wiring harness if you want to do that. Some of these older wiring harnesses required you to do this. This newer one does not. And There are some programming options where you can go in and you can program the Idealink Maestro. I believe you program it in through the radio. You can tell it that if it detects something plugged into the ODB2 port to shut this off. So if you're running VCDS or OBX11 or the dealer servicing your car, it will shut off the signal going to the radio. So there's also a little Molex plug down here, so you can unplug this if you decide you don't want to use it and you don't want this behind the dash. Now this wiring harness here has a version date of version 2.10 and has a QC sticker on it from July 18th of 2018. So this has been sitting on a shelf somewhere, and this harness does not have any RCA connectors on it. I've seen some of these harnesses that have that on it, and I don't know if that's a newer version of this harness or an older. I wasn't able to find that out. So some of these plugs, all of these plugs go into your iMaestro Idatalink RR, and then this is what gets spliced to the Idatalink wiring harness. So that's no, I think I've got that. I got that backwards. We're going to be splicing something into the wiring harness on the Pioneer, which isn't taken out of the box yet. Sorry about that. That's going to pretty much wrap up the unboxing of the iMaestro Vw1 wiring harness. Sorry about the little mix-up there with what gets spliced into what. Let's get this out of the way and we'll move on, and we'll take a look at the Pioneer real quick as well. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the specs of the Pioneer head unit. One of the reasons I prefer the Pioneer over some of the other brands on the market is due to the Pioneer's built-in digital signal processing and its ability to do automatic time alignment. Automatic time alignment to me isn't really a necessity, but if you don't have that option, you're going to sit in your car in the driver's seat and you're going to use a tape measure and you're going to measure the distance of each speaker to your mirror or to your ears, and you're going to write down that information, and then you're going to input it manually into the head unit for time alignment. So you're basically going to optimize your sound stage for the driver's seat, where whether it's left or right, depending upon what country you're in. The Pioneer not only allows you to do that, but the automatic time alignment using a specialized microphone will set all of your gain controls, your left-right balances, front-rear balances, and the EQ automatically. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to give you the best sound quality. It's going to basically get everything set up for your listening position and balance. After that's done, you can go in and make your own tweaks so things sound right to your ear. But it's a better starting point than nothing. That's for sure. Some of the other radios on the market don't have that feature. One of the other features which is real important to me, there's two features. Power output. This uses a MOSFET amplifier. The power output on these factory head units is more than ample to run mid-bass and tweeters up front and mid-bass and tweeters in the rear, assuming the speakers you're running have a high efficiency. The more efficient your speakers, the less power you need to reach a certain decibel level. So if you've got speakers that are 85 dB at 1 watt, 1 meter, and I'm running ones that are 95 at 1 watt or 1 meter, well, you're going to need a lot of power to get to the same volume level as me, and I won't need anywhere near the power. So the more efficient your speakers are, less power you need to drive them, basically. So good internal power on the Pioneers, in my opinion. And we also have dedicated subwoofer outputs for dedicated sub, which is independently adjustable and has its own crossover setting, its own gain setting, and you can reverse the polarity of the sub if you so need to. And then you've got internal crossovers for your front and rear channels. So if you're running a set of component speakers, mid-bass and tweeter in your door, that comes with a passive crossover. Well, that passive crossover basically sends all the frequencies, say, above 3,000 hertz to your tweeters, and everything below that to the mid-bass. Well, mid-bass, you don't want a lot of bass on those speakers. That's not really what they're designed for. So this internal crossover can basically filter out, you're creating a bandpass by using the passive crossover from your components and the electronic crossover that's built into this. So your mid-bass speakers, let's say you set the crossover frequency at 150 and above. So now your mid-bass is only going to get 150 to 3,000 hertz. So you have less chance of damaging your mid-bass speakers by putting too much bass into them. And this goes back to what I previously said in the beginning of the video, where you know, without that functionality, I can't really turn the bass up because I start having problems with my door speakers. So that's not where my bass is. My bass is in the trunk, and I have to turn my bass levels down so I don't damage my door speakers. So this gives me more flexibility. It gives anybody more flexibility, actually. So anyway, let's move on with the unboxing. All right, so we've got 2 user manuals. This should be installation guide, probably. Warranty card, a USB extension cable. One thing to note, the USB is on the rear of this unit, whereas the RCD 330, the RCD 360, the USB is on the front. So, you know, in the Volkswagen, you're going to have to figure out where to route this. You know, if you're running an Apple phone and you're going to do Apple CarPlay, you're going to have to plug your charging cable into this and plug this into the back of the radio. So you're going to have to figure out a place to route your wire. When I get to that point, I'll talk about that in a separate video. Mounting screws, wiring harness, which will need to be spliced into one of the other wiring harnesses. And then we have the included Bluetooth microphone with the mono 2.5 millimeter jack on it. There's some two-sided tape in there, and you can see the microphone's got this big clip on it, and I don't particularly like these. The radio does not come with the DSP microphone. The DSP microphone is different. It has a larger jack on it, and it's about yay big. So you have to buy that separately. I do have one of those on order. I don't have it yet. I'll talk about that in another video when it actually arrives. And the RCD 330, although it is a double DIN like this, of course it's larger because it has a bezel with buttons on it. The RCD 330 is actually a half DIN. There's only half the space here. This is a full 2 DIN unit. So on the back here, without looking at the user manual, I can't tell you what everything is, but from what I can gather from memory, this is our main wiring harness. This is the fuse for the radio. This is the aux input jack. As like I mentioned earlier, that audio cable going to the Idatalink for Bluetooth would be plugged into here, or if you're using the DSP microphone like I'm going to be using, it will be plugged into here. USB, this smaller 2.5 millimeter jack, this is for your Bluetooth microphone. This, I believe, is for some wired control. Idatalink connection over here. You've got several sets of RCA outputs. Should be subwoofer. I don't know what they are right off the top of my head. Sorry. Oh, they are labeled. I can't barely. Subwoofer, right, left. Anyway, well, it's all in the user manual. This is the antenna jack. Like I mentioned, this takes a standard antenna jack input. I don't remember exactly what that's for. Anyway, but those are the connections on the back. And that's pretty much it for the unit and the unboxing. So that's going to conclude this unboxing and brief discussion of the Pioneer DMH-1500NEX and the Idatalink Maestro Rr and the Idatalink Maestro Vw1 Wiring Harness, and what I'm preparing to do. The next videos that follow in this will be prep videos or installation videos. So stay tuned for more concerning this installation. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.